Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. We have made it to part 3 of the Launchpad Academy training. The theme of today is going to be leveling up your account. So with that, let's go ahead and jump right into this. Okay, my name is Jessica Michaels. I'm going to be your presenter today. I'm proud to say I've been a member of the team here for close to 7 years. And my goal is to provide you with the education and resources to get the most out of your CallTrackingMetrics account. If you've attended any of the courses leading up to today, you know that I like to start with a couple of exercises just to make sure that we are all in a good place for this webinar. So inside of your Zoom panel, you'll see there's a hand raise icon. I can actually see they're already going up. So if you can see my screen and hear me, will you raise your hands? All right, I see them going up across the board, which is good, which means that everyone can hear and see me. In addition to that, we also have a Q&A and a chat box. So if you have any questions during this presentation or run into any technical difficulties, you should definitely, if anything technical, reach out in the Q&A box or the chat, and we have a team here to help you. And then we are going to have designated time at the end to address questions. But if you have any in the moment, we do have people monitoring this webinar, so they'll be able to answer those live. Okay, so this is part 3 of our 6-day training and the end of our training for this week. So on our first 2 days, we've explored the app's navigation and got real familiar with that. And then yesterday we really took a deep dive into our core concepts. So we took a look at things like, purchasing tracking numbers. We talked about the porting process, configuring your tracking numbers. We looked at configuring your tracking sources. We defined things like different routing options that we offer, as well as our tracking code and what target numbers are. So today we're going to get into a little bit more advanced features. So today we're going to be, actually let me jump ahead 2 slides. We're going to be looking at some advanced call log features such as filters and exports. We're going to talk about using the soft phone in a lot of depth. We're going to look at notifications, and we're also going to take a look at our Google Analytics integration. So before we dive into it, I always get a lot of questions around, will this webinar be recorded? Absolutely, it is being recorded as we speak. And then the recordings I'm posting live by the end of the day in our knowledge base. So question number 2, where can I find these recordings and a copy of the slide deck? So if you're in the knowledge base, we have a recorded training section. So that is our support hub here, knowledge base. And then if you head into recorded trainings, so let me grab this one. This is where you can grab the slide deck for today's course. And then by the end of today, I'll have the recording there as well. So let me go ahead and paste that into the chat. And then if you were interested in seeing the recording from yesterday or the day before, that can be found here. So let me go ahead and paste that in as well so that we all have those resources available for us. Okay, and then also throughout the course of today, I'm going to be switching in between the deck as well as the live CTM account here that I'll be demoing. Okay. I see somebody says that they can't hear me. Let's just do a test one more time. If you can hear me, raise your hand. Okay, so I see hands going up all over the place. So that might have something to do with the computer settings, but I guess they can't hear me. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into our presentation for today. So the first concept we're going to look at is filters. A filter is how you can easily run a report for the call log quickly. It's ideal for managers who need to manage an employee or monitor their calls. Perhaps the same report needs to be run every day and viewed in the logs. It's great for doing spot checks to see if more interest is required. So things like this, I think it's best just to show and tell more than kind of read about. So over here, we have our filter option. So we have some nice jump to, so we can filter by any date frame. We have a few quick jumps. You can filter by pretty much any dimension we have inside of the activity logs. So it could be by tag, by specific agent. You can filter by activity type for tracking source. You can add multiple items here as well, so it doesn't have to just be one. And something else to note is that we have different options here as well. So it could be include, exclude, is set, isn't set. So a few different options. You can filter by things like status. So was this answered? So something you might look for often is maybe, your calls that were no answer or failed. That would definitely be something worth looking into. You can filter by ring time, talk time, or total time. Total time would be the combination of the two. You can also add any custom fields in the filter, or they'll automatically be added. We'll be talking about custom fields during the second half of the course next week. You can filter by tags, star ratings. So something else that's great about filters is if it's something that I'm going to do often, I can choose to save that filter so that I can access them from a drop down. So something I might want is, like Google paid traffic. So that would apply it. I don't have any that meet the criteria. So if it's something like if I want to see inbound calls to maybe my agent, I could then apply that filter and it would show me all of those. Now, if this is something that I want to revisit, then I could, of course, come up here and hit save. So I might say, or agent Jessica, something like that. So that way I can easily revisit that filter. Okay. So I think filters are pretty straightforward. One thing that's nice about the filters is that it also is available for our activity reports. So we have all the same filter options as we're viewing the reports. So we can view them here. So I could grab my filter and see my calls this way and apply, because I haven't had any in that time frame, hit all time frame. And there it would be. And then if this is showing me by source. So what's kind of cool too is I have it filtered for my calls. Then if I click into this report, it will bring me to a filtered view of that inside of the call log. So that is filters. So next we're going to talk about exports. So exports is how we can take the data from CallTrackingMetrics and then put it into other platforms. So let's see. Again, I think this is better to show rather than talk about in the slide. So here we have our export. First, we want to decide, who we're going to email it to. So it's going to choose my email address because I'm the user in the account, but obviously I could send that to my manager or anyone else. And then when we're doing the export, we have the full filter option in here. So I could filter the export that I'm running. And then if I scroll to the bottom, I also have any save filters. So again, those are handy tools. Now, typically when we're exporting the logs, it's because we're going to be putting them somewhere else. So when we're doing that, we want to make sure we're matching the format. So if you're uploading this into a platform, you want to make sure that the phone format is correct. Otherwise, you'll have to edit the spreadsheet, which of course we don't want to do that. Same with the time format. You're going to want to make sure that's consistent. And then we have the export format. So a lot of people, again, are running these exports to upload them into other platforms. So if you're uploading these into Google Ads for session-based traffic or click-to-call traffic or Facebook or Bing or even Marin, we have formats for you so that it's going to export it in the proper way so that it just immediately or it effortlessly can be uploaded without having to change any of the fields. So those are pretty handy. So if you're running this for, a format that we don't offer, here's where you can choose what fields you'd like to include. So One thing to note is you see we have the darker box and the lighter boxes underneath. So this is a category and everything that falls under that category. So I could click over individual ones, but if I wanted all of it, I can just click the category and it would pull all of them over. So it's like a quick jump to pull them all. And then if I find, I have some in here that I don't want, I can just, click them and that will send them back to not include those fields. So if this is something that you need to run regularly, you can set a schedule. So you can set this daily, weekly, or monthly. So if I wanted to run this weekly, I can also choose what time it would run. So some people like this, first thing in their inbox in the morning, or some people like it to come at the end of the day. So really, whatever fits your schedule best. And then of course you have the option to just run this once. So that is exports. They're pretty straightforward. Okay, switch back over here. So next we're going to talk about scoring. Now we briefly introduced scoring on Monday's class, but today we're going to take a little deeper dive into them. So with scoring, just about everything we have is customizable, and that's what we're going to explore. So first, what is call scoring? So inside of our logs here, we have the ability to score these activities. So if let's see, here's one that I already have scored. Here's another one. So we can come in here and we can select, we can build a drop down of reporting tags, or you have the option to free type them in. The benefit of using the drop down is that reporting tags can go into our filters. So the drop down is going to keep them consistent. So if you have things like lowercase s for sales versus uppercase S, or put an S on the end for sales, if they're inconsistent, it's not going to have the logic to consolidate them. So using a drop down is really nice to keep them consistent for reporting. But if you wanted to, you of course have the options to type them in. So what we're going to explore is customizing the scoring column. So I actually have a slide for that. But to do so, we would head over to the Reportings tab, and then we have scoring down here, and then that's where we can fully customize it. So let's go ahead and we'll go to the Reporting tab and then scoring. So with this, pretty much everything here can be customized in one way or another. So we can change the name of the column. So in this case, it is score, but maybe I want to call it quality. Some people even call it lead review. So however you want to name it, or you could simply disable it. So in this case, the field was renamed to, rate lead. Instead of calling it converted, I put lead quality, but I have the ability just to disable it. Converted amount, here we can give them the option to add a sale amount or not. So it makes sense to have that added. Now, when it comes to the dropdown, this is where you have the option to add the limited tag list and enter them in. So if I wanted the agents to be able to free type a reporting tag, I would just leave this off. But if I did want them to choose from a dropdown, I would just put in the fields here that they can select from. So that is how we can edit the scoring. And let me just change the name so we can see. Oops. So if I put that in, and now we go back to the call log, which also, pro tip here, if you click the logo in the upper left-hand corner, that's a quick jump back to the activity log. So it'll bring us back. Now you can see that I have changed the name from score to quality. So again, you just have a lot of room to customize those. All right. So that is scoring, and that is how we can edit the reporting tags. Okay, so next we're going to change gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about the soft phone. But I actually have a really great video that goes over some of the soft phone concepts. So let's watch that first, and then we'll explore it together.
Using the CallTrackingMetrics soft phone. In this video, we'll go over the basics of the CallTrackingMetrics soft phone, including software and hardware requirements, how to open the soft phone features, and answering calls. Soft phone requirements. To use the soft phone, a headset is required, and it's recommended to use an adjustable microphone and a hard-wired connection. The soft phone requires an internet browser. It works best when using the most recent version of Google Chrome. An internet connection with QoS enabled is also required. Ask your internet service provider to confirm or enable QoS on your account. This will prioritize voice traffic in your network, which helps ensure audio quality during your calls. Opening the soft phone. Desk mode. Clicking on the desk mode button embeds the soft phone in the activity log. You can find the desk mode button at the top of the activity log panel. When clicked, it slides the activity log over to reveal the soft phone. Phone button. Clicking on the phone button opens the pop-out version of the soft phone. The phone button is located at the top right corner of the activity log. When clicked, a new browser window containing the soft phone is launched. The phone icon. The phone icon appears on every screen of CallTrackingMetrics. Clicking on the phone icon sends you to the activity log containing the soft phone in desk mode. Using the soft phone. Agent status. The status of an agent can be changed through the drop-down menu at the top left corner of the soft phone. If an agent's status is set to not available, their phone will not ring. Dial pad. Tap or click the dial pad to initiate an outbound call. Number dialed. Here, the number that has been dialed will be displayed. You can type or paste a number to trigger an outbound call. Soft phone settings. Clicking the soft phone settings icon opens a pop-up of the soft phone settings options. The settings icon is located in the upper right corner of the soft phone. The soft phone settings include light or dark mode, outbound dialing number, voicemail, audio settings. Dark mode. Dark mode inverts the color scheme of the CallTrackingMetrics application. Dark mode will always automatically generate a dark mode friendly version of any custom logos you have uploaded to your account. If you've been accepting calls but need to take a break to make an outbound call, click Stop Accepting Calls to make yourself unavailable for calls. Accepting calls. Click Ignore to choose not to answer this call, but remain in accepting calls mode. While the call is active, you'll have new options in your phone for transferring, placing the call on hold, conference calls, notes, and scoring.
All right, so that gave us a pretty nice overview of the soft phone. So one second.
Using the CallTrackingMetrics soft phone.
Oh man, sorry about that. I don't know why. I actually tried to find it out, but when I play videos, it always doubles up on the slides. So, okay, so the soft phone. So using the soft phone, in order to do that, we need, a headset or a microphone, or, honestly, you could just use your computer audio, but using a headset is obviously going to be higher quality. So software, you just need to be able to connect to the internet, and then, an internet connection. So opening the soft phone, there's 3 different ways that we can get there. Like the video said, we can click desk mode and that would open the phone. We can click the phone button and that would have a pop out, or we have the phone icon in the app. So let me show you those. I'm not going to click them because that actually disrupted my audio on Monday when I did that. But here, this would be the pop-out phone, and that will be visible on any tab. So if I was under, say, voice menus, so you always have this quick jump to. And then we have desk mode. So desk mode would actually embed the phone over here. And then we have the phone button as well. So we have 3 different ways that we can get to the soft phone. All right. So answering a call. So in order for a call to ring to your soft phone, it needs to be routed to you. So that would either be routed to you as an agent or through a voice menu or a call queue that is pointing to you. And when it rings to you, it's going to have a pop-up in your soft phone and you'll hear ringing as well. So fun, you can actually personalize your ringtone under your profile settings. So you could choose what that ringtone sounds like. And you also have the option when it pops up to ignore the call. So you'll have the option to answer or ignore it. Okay. So here we have some soft phone settings. So one is going to be the agent status. Now this is what separates the soft phone from your traditional desk phone, is that in order for it to actually ring to you, you have to be in available mode. So if you're marked as, oops, gonna jump ahead. If you're marked as not available, it's not going to ring to you. So you want to make sure that you are in available mode, which is telling the system that you're there to ring to you. So number 2 here, if you're doing an outbound dial, that would be the number that you are dialing. Number 3 here, pretty self-explanatory. That's going to be your dial pad. 4 is going to bring you to your soft phone settings, which we'll be showing in a second. 5 is going to bring you to the contacts, and then 6 here is going to be the button that's going to let you put yourself in accepting calls mode. And then if you're in available mode, this would be to put you in not available mode. Okay, and then if you are a member of multiple queues, you can select which queues would be ringing to you. So you could actually toggle in between queues. I will be talking about queues in more detail, I believe, in the second class of the second series. So in your soft phone, if you are utilizing our chat, there'll be another tab for the chat as well as our internal chat. And then if you're on a live call, you have the ability to start and stop the recording, and you'll see that button right there. And then if you were to select the settings, that would bring you to this screen. And this is where you can set the light mode or dark mode. You can enter in your receiving number. You can configure your voicemail here. You can choose to, have that emailed and transcribed to you. You can set your audio settings here as well. All right, so if you're on a live call, let's see, we're going to have your status here. So you're on an outbound call. Number 2 here, these are going to be your typical, live call phone options that you would expect to see. So you have the ability to put that caller on hold. And if you were to click this, you'd see you have 2 hold options. One is you can put that call on hold and park for yourself, or you can put it on hold and park so anyone else could pick that up. You have the ability to mute that call. You can access the keypad. So, if you're calling into, say, support and you have to put in a code, that's how you get to the keypad. The participants would show you the parties on the phone. And then if you actually were to click that, you also have the option to add additional people to that call. And then you have the option to transfer that live call as well. So if you were to select transfer, from there you have the ability, you can transfer to additional agents, you can transfer to receiving lines, so lines outside of our system. You can transfer to queues, voice menus, and even voicemails. And then number 4 here, pretty straightforward, you can hang up the call. And here's some troubleshooting tips for you. So if you didn't get a chance to download the slides, I did put that link in the chat, so you might want to just, bookmark this for later. Okay, so with that, we're going to move on to notifications. So notifications are customizable alerts that can be sent immediately after an activity or based on a regular time frame, such as a weekly or monthly. Common use cases for notifications include missed calls, form submission alerts, specific tracking source alerts, regular call volume reports, voicemail, and time-specific agent reports. So there's a lot of different ways that we can configure notifications, which let me show you them. So to get to notifications, we will come to our reporting tab, and then we have notifications down here. So if I go to new notification, the first thing I need to decide is, what type of notification this is going to be. So do I want this to go out after every activity, after a text message? Do I want this hourly after every activity, daily, weekly, monthly? So, some different digest type of things that we can create. After every form submission, after every sale or conversion. So that's going to be, if we're going in and scoring those activities, maybe after tracking number of purchases or tracking number that are released. So we have a lot of different options here. So if I wanted a daily one, might put in, daily digest. Then we come here, and this is going to be the fields that we want to include. So much like the export we just demoed, this is how we would choose the fields. And then we can add specific filters. So this is a pretty common one that I see people using, because marketers might be most interested in, receiving their Google Ads calls, because that's where they're spending their money and their focus. So you might want to say, tracking source includes any, and then, put in my Google Ads and maybe even add extensions, so that now this notification is going to be specific to these conditions. So we can add additional rules too. So maybe I want to fine tune this to these that are scored, and maybe I want it to be my qualified ones. So we'll say that have a 3-star score or higher. And I can actually test from past calls and even see a preview of what that would look like. So that is notifications. So it's a great way for people who don't spend a lot of time inside of CTM and, monitoring the logs, to still get notified of, the activities going on within your account. There we go. So we're going to change gears here, and we're going to talk about our Google Analytics integration. So let's go ahead and dive into this. So the first concept here is the 2 types of paid activities. So here we have a typical Google Ads and what we might expect it to look like. So with this, there's really 2 calls to action here. One is to click the ad, and the other is to call the phone number. And they operate very differently. So if we were to actually click this ad, we would be routed to something like this. So we'll have a landing page. And what happens here is that, CallTrackingMetrics tracking script is going to be here. Google Analytics tracking script is going to be here. So essentially, CTM and Google are both tracking this session. And so with the Google Analytics integration, we're able to match those sessions, and we're able to send analytics data, and then analytics is able to pass us back campaign data. Now, in the case of a click-to-call, in this instance, Google Analytics tracking script isn't going to be there, and CTM's tracking script isn't going to be there, because this is going to take place inside of Google's search results. So we actually have a completely different way that we communicate with Google for these type of activities. The good news is that with both types, we're able to get that attribution, but we're going to handle them differently. So really the big takeaway here is that we would always recommend that you have separate tracking numbers and separate tracking sources for your ad extensions and your click to landing pages. So that's why I really try to stress the difference of a click to call. And then if I go back, we have a click to landing page. So with that, I have another quick video that talks about how we get that attribution from Google Analytics and ads. So let's take a quick look at this.
Welcome to Call Tracking Metrics training video. In this workshop, we're going to be covering the setup of Call Tracking Metrics integration with Google Analytics and AdWords. Before you begin, you must have user access to Google Analytics, admin access to Call Tracking Metrics. You must be using the same email address to log into both systems. The Call Tracking Metrics tracking script should be installed on your website. The Google Analytics tracking script should also be installed on your website. Google Analytics and Google AdWords should be synced and communicating. Lastly, auto-tagging needs to be enabled in AdWords. Call Tracking Metrics has two integrations for the two types of Google paid calls, Google Analytics and Google AdWords. The AdWords integrations tracks calls from click-to-call ads and call extensions, while the Analytics integrations tracks and attributes data from click-to-landing pages. When performing a search, it's common for ads to have multiple call to actions, like displaying a phone number to call or a link to click. When you click to the landing page, there will be a GCLID in the URL. This is Google's paid click identifier. It essentially acts as a unique receipt numbers for paid clicks. When you click to a landing page, Call Tracking Metrics tracking script is present, as well as Google Analytics tracking script. The two softwares match sessions data and share session data. While for click-to-call, Google AdWords uses a Google forwarding number, which forwards to a call tracking number, and the two systems match and pass data. Two types of paid calls, both reporting as conversions in AdWords. Welcome to Call Tracking Metrics.
Okay, so hopefully that helps explain the difference between the two ways we communicate with Google. And then with that, we get different information. So we do have a Google Ads Direct Connect integration. That is available on our marketing and contact center plan. So as far as this attribution that I'm going to talk about, this is going to be specific to the Google Analytics integration. So just try to keep that in mind. So with this, with our click to landing page attribution that we can get, we get the campaign, the ad group, we'll get the keyword, we'll get the source medium, we'll get the landing page URL. And then these activities can be counted as conversions in Google Ads. And of course, they can count as conversions in Google Analytics. So all of this can be accomplished with the Google Analytics integration for click to landing page ads. Now, it works a little differently for our click to calls. So with this, we'll be able to get the campaign, the ad group, the keyword, the source and medium. Now we're not going to be able to get the landing page because there's obviously not a landing page because it's a click to call. There is no session. Now with this, these will also not be able to go into Google Ads as a conversion because there's no GCLID. So the way that it works for our click to landing pages is that we're capturing that GCLID and tracking that session. So we match that session with Google Analytics tracking, and then that's how we're able to send that into Google Ads. Now for a click to call, we don't have a session to match. So while we can still have those count as conversions in Google Analytics, they can't make that pass from Google Analytics to Google Ads. to go in as a conversion. Now, again, we do have a solution for that, but that's going to be utilizing our Google Ads Direct Connect integration, and we'll be covering that in the second portion of the academy, which will be in 2 weeks. Okay, so another expert tip, or I guess this is again, that it is 100% in our best practices and recommended to use a separate tracking number and tracking source for your Google Ads and your ad extensions, because we're going to have different ways to send that data into Google Ads as conversions. Okay, and so what happens with our analytics integration is that we send all of our inbound activities into Google Analytics as events. So before we dive into the integration and configuring that, we're going to get a little bit more familiar with events inside of Google Analytics. So I believe this is my last video for you guys today.
Welcome to CallTrackingMetrics training video. In this workshop, we're going to be covering how CallTrackingMetrics sends events into Google Analytics. CallTrackingMetrics sends events into Google Analytics for every inbound call, text, and form. An event in Google Analytics can be broken up into 4 main components: category, action, label, value. By default, the category will be calls. Inside of CTM, there are several different ways to customize the category of an event. The action will always be equal to the name of the tracking source. The label is made of 4 parts. The label of the tracking number. If the tracking number isn't labeled, it will report as not set. Next is the tracking number that was dialed, followed by whether or not this was a first-time or repeat caller. Lastly, the unique call identification number. By default, the value refers to seconds of talk time. If you have call conversion events enabled, the value will be the entered conversion amount. Commonly, the category will be calls. The action will always match the tracking source. Here's an example of how a call sale event would report in Google Analytics. Here's another example of how an event could report in Analytics. To view the events in Analytics, select the Behaviors tab. From the Behaviors tab drop-down, select Events, Events Overview. The Event Overview will display your top-performing events in Analytics. Hopefully these terms are starting to look familiar. Category, action, and label. If you click into the calls category, it will display the total number of reported calls. From here, you can select the action. The action will display your calls broken out by tracking source. If you click into one of the event action, it will bring you to the label view for just that tracking source. The label will display the 4 components of the event label. These are the basic fields of an event in Google Analytics. However, if you want to view additional information, you can do that by adding secondary dimensions to your report in Analytics. I would recommend viewing this data under the label view. Remember that an event is not a conversion. To set up a call conversion, you'll need to create a goal in Analytics. Thanks for watching. Welcome to
Okay, so that is how we send events and a lot about events. So once we have our events sent into Google Analytics, for most of our customers, the goal is to get them from Analytics into ads to count as a conversion. So the way that we can do that is with the creation of goals inside of Google Analytics. So when you're creating a goal in Analytics, the type does need to be event, because again, we are sending events into Analytics. So the goals allow you to fine tune and qualify what you want to count as a conversion for your activities. For example, we send inbound activities into Google Analytics, so you may only want to count calls that maybe is over 5 minutes long, or a first-time caller, calls to a specific tracking source or tracking number. You can create different goals for different types of activities, such as phone calls versus an inbound chat, or maybe you want to have goals for all the above. So in general, goals are a way to qualify the data that you want to transfer from Analytics into ads as a conversion. Okay. Now, when it comes to setting up the integration for Google Analytics, we're going to give you a lot of options. So by default, when you first connect, it's going to, well, first, before you connect on the integration page, you won't have any of this information here. So the first thing it's going to ask you to do is to link to Google Analytics. So once you link, then you'll be, this screen will be displayed. And the first thing it's going to show you is the name of the property that you're linked to and the UA code of that property. Then it's going to tell you the email address that is connecting the two of them together. And then by default, these first two toggles are going to be enabled. So the first one is just, whoops, is going to allow us to send data into Google Analytics. And we're going to do that after every activity. Now, the second one is going to allow us to send data that does not have a session. So that's going to be your offline sources. And then we're going to have the, if you do want to send your offline sources into analytics, we're going to give you a little checkbox to give you the option to send an initial page view prior to sending those. So it kind of simulates a session for that event to be mapped to. Then we have the option to send conversion events into Google Analytics. So what that's going to do is it's going to send the initial event after the activity. And then if you mark that call as converted, that will go into Google Analytics as a call sale event. So that's a really great way to measure your leads versus sales in analytics. You also have the option to send the event to the web property linked to the activity. So what that means is by default, we're going to send all the events into this property. But if we notice on your landing page or website that the analytics property is different than the one that we have here, we're going to default to sending to the one on the landing page itself. So that's actually, it's very useful for our business plan customers who might be using one CallTrackingMetrics account to track maybe 2 or 3 businesses. Now, if you have 5+ businesses out of one CTM account, it gets a little messy when you're sending them all over the place. So at that point, you might want to upgrade to our marketing plan and then have separate sub-accounts for those. So we're also going to give you the option to customize the events by activity type. So that kind of speaks to the evolution of CallTrackingMetrics. When we first started, we just did phone calls. So by default, we send all the events into Google Analytics under the category of calls. But over the years, we've expanded and we now do, phone calls, chats, forms, faxes, and texts. So it would make sense to categorize them by the activity type. So that's what that option will do. So rather than going in as a call, it'll go in as a form if it's a form. We also give you the option to automatically associate cost data to the activity. So what that means is that if this is a Google paid call that comes in, we'll be able to tell you the cost of the click that led to that phone call. And then that will tie into our ROI reports. So that is a really great way if you are trying to measure true return on your investment with Google Ads and CTM. We'll tell you the cost of the click that led to the call. And then if you're utilizing our call scoring, we'll actually be able to tell you your true return on these things. So that is going through the options that we have on the integration page. And then I was wrong. Looks like we do have one more video for you. And this is going to be going over setting up those goals inside of Google Analytics. So let's take a look at this.
Welcome to CallTrackingMetrics training video. In this workshop, we're going to be covering how to create a goal in Google Analytics. When creating a goal, the goal type should be event. Here's a recap of the components that make up an event in Google Analytics: category, action, label, and value. Here's an example of what a call event in Analytics could look like. To create a goal in Analytics, navigate to the Admin tab. Next, you'll want to select the account, property, and view you'd like to create the goal in. We recommend selecting a view that isn't filtered or the All Website Data view. From the goal setup, you may see the option for goal templates. However, we're going to create a custom goal. The next step will be to name your goal. We recommend naming it something easily identifiable like CTM calls or Google AdWords calls. Set the goal type to be an event and select Continue. Now we need to configure the goal. In this example, we're going to create a goal for calls to our Google AdWords tracking source where the category is calls. Keep in mind that there are several ways to customize the category of the event, so be sure to double-check how your events are reporting. The label gives you the option to further fine-tune your goal to only complete for first-time callers. If you're including a label, it will need to be set to a regular expression. Including a value with a minimum amount of talk time of something like 120 seconds is a great way to further qualify your calls and will prevent hang-ups and voicemails from counting as conversions. Hit save and you've successfully created a goal in analytics. Thanks for watching. Welcome to Call Tracking.
All right. So that's an overview of creating goals in analytics. And for business plan customers, the goal completions and analytics are most commonly used to send conversions into Google Ads. So in order to do that, you need to ensure that your Google Analytics and Google Ads are connected. And then inside of Google Ads, you'll need to import that goal in to count as a conversion. So that is a fairly seamless process. And then what's nice is that once you have that goal imported, it will just simply flow in. So as your calls are completed in CTM, they'll go into Google Analytics as events. And then if those events meet the goal requirements inside of Google Analytics, it will then be a goal completion and conversion in Analytics, and then it will pass into ads as a conversion. So that's the full flow of sending data from CTM into Google Analytics and then Analytics passing it into Google Ads. So with that, I did create a checklist for you guys. So again, hopefully everyone had a chance to download the slides. There are some things that are pretty critical that need to be done in order to have successful attribution and conversions flowing between the platforms. So you're going to want to make sure that CTM's tracking code is on the page. You're going to want to make sure that Google Analytics tracking code is on the page, because if Analytics isn't tracking that session, they're not going to be able to pass us back any data. You're going to want to make sure that CTM and Google Analytics are properly connected. You're going to want to make sure that Google Analytics and Google Ads are connected, because if they aren't, obviously that goal completion can't go into Google Ads. Inside of Google Ads, you're going to want to ensure that auto tagging is enabled so that it will be writing in that GCL ID. Also inside of Google Ads, you're going to want to ensure that call reporting is enabled. So what's going to happen with that is that's how we're going to be able to communicate ad extensions. And then you're going to want to have goals around the events in Google Analytics. And then, of course, you're going to want to make sure that you have that goal inside of Google Analytics imported from Analytics into Ads. So in order for us to be sending conversions through Analytics, we're going to need to make sure that all of these boxes are checked. And then again, remember that we cannot send conversions for ad extensions from Analytics to Ads because there's no GCL ID. So this would just be in reference to click to landing pages. And again, we can send them into Google Ads, but that's going to have to be using our Google Ads Direct Connect. So the goal was for this session to be 45 minutes long, so we're just over that. So I just wanted to again show you guys where you can find the recording of this session. That'll be under recorded trainings. And then with that, I'll open up to any questions that anyone might have. Now, we do have people who've been monitoring the questions, so I know that they have been answered live. So if you have any additional questions regarding the soft phone, notifications, call scoring, or analytics integration, fire away. Happy to answer them. And then while you are typing in your questions, I'll show you what the actual integration looks like. So we would go to Settings, Integrations. And then we have our Google Analytics. Now in this case, I am connected, just like we saw in that screenshot. And then here we have all the different toggles that you can choose to enable or disable. Surprising, I don't see any questions coming in. Maybe we just answered everything so well with the slides. Something else that's helpful that I showed in yesterday's class is that when you connect to Google Analytics, it's going to give you a preview of your session traffic, and then it'll tell you how many tracking numbers it would suggest for those sources. So here's my top sources. So I have Google Ads, Facebook, webinar, Google Organic, and website. So with those, it would tell me how many daily users I have to that, and then suggest a tracking number amount. So that's helpful if you're trying to decide how many tracking numbers you need for each source. So I see somebody says you were very informative. Thank you. You're very welcome. We also have some tools down here. So one, if you wanted to check to make sure that you are your connection to Google Analytics is still live, it'll tell you, good news, everything is corrected. Now I see someone asked, what do we mean by 3 users for Google Ads? So this is actually users to my website. So what this is doing is it's going to analyze, it's connected to Google Analytics, so it's sharing some session data. So we recommend 1 tracking number per 20 visitors to your site or users a day. So in this case, it's a demo site, so it doesn't have real traffic going to it. So it's saying, it's identified 3 users, so it would recommend 1 tracking number. So if you are brand new to us and you're trying to determine how many tracking numbers you need for each of your sources, this is a really handy tool. So you could, even if you don't plan on using the analytics integration, you could actually just disable this so we're not sending any data. And then it will tell you, a suggested amount of tracking numbers per source. So it's definitely a nice starting point. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any questions coming in. So thank you all so much for attending. And again, the recording can be found under recorded trainings. So we actually have some more in-depth webinars under that as well that go over our Google Analytics integration and a lot more depth. So if you wanted to check that out, you can find that there as well. So with that, thank you so much for attending today, and I hope to see everyone in our second session in 2 weeks.